Hi, I'm Jeffrey and this is AutoAlchemy. Today, coming at you with a bit of a weird video. Basically, I just wanted to take a few minutes out of my day to do some commentary on a video that I recently watched, a video that I believe was a great illustration of certain concepts from the objective personality system. And one big reason that this video seems like a gold mine of objective personality insights is because the two main participants in the conversation have actually been officially typed. So the dynamics that I feel like I'm perceiving aren't entirely subjective. So yeah, I recently happened upon this conversation between Chris Voss and Jordan Peterson. So Chris Voss is the guy you can see on the screen right now, and he used to be an FBI hostage negotiator. So he was involved in these really high stakes situations where it really mattered how effective he was at being able to negotiate. And so yeah, Chris is here trying to promote his new book, Never Split the Difference, and he's speaking with Jordan Peterson, who you can see right here. Jordan Peterson is a controversial Canadian professor of psychology. One thing that's really compelling about this conversation for me is that these two guys are almost complete opposites. So Jordan here has been typed NETI, consume, play, blast, sleep, and Chris has been typed SIFE, blast, sleep, play, consume. So you've got someone who is allegedly an ENTP in conversation with someone who is allegedly an ISFJ. And I realize that some people out there are immediately going to object to either one of these typings, which, fair enough. At the very least, it might be helpful for you to think about these two characters in terms of archetypes. In this conversation and in many other conversations, Peterson does a pretty good job of playing the archetype of the rambling, open-minded, overly intellectual professor, whereas Chris Voss is more down-to-earth, more straightforward and procedural, and his entire job, it revolves around shifting people from one emotional state to another. So some important context here is that, as I mentioned before, Chris is trying to promote his book, and the main thesis of his book and the title of his book is Never Split the Difference. So what does that really mean? Basically, he's talking about situations where you're supposed to compromise, you're supposed to negotiate, and he's basically saying that when we try to meet in the middle, we both subjectively experience it as a loss, and so everybody loses, and the quality of our relationship itself is degraded by that fact. So instead, we should be shooting for currently undetected win-win scenarios. So it kind of demands some creative thinking, getting outside the box. So anyway, there's your context, and now I just want to play what I think is a cringy and humorous moment.
Are you married, Chris?
There is an ex-Mrs. Voss, and I'm looking for the future ex-Mrs. Voss.
Ah, did your marriage fail as a consequence of poor negotiation?
Anyway, I just wanted to play that because it becomes relevant later. Now we've jumped ahead in the video a little bit. Prior to this moment, Michaela Peterson here, who is Jordan's daughter, was asking Chris about the basic idea of his book, and he was explaining what I explained to you guys not too long ago. And then after he explains that, this is what happens, courtesy of Jordan.
Yeah, so it's interesting because compromise is a reasonable way of construing negotiation, I think. If you're deadlocked and you have to make a decision, and there's also there's time pressure. So then it seems to me under those circumstances, that would be a reasonable heuristic to say, well, we'll split the difference and we'll both be unhappy.
No, how dare you? How dare you? No, 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 no.
So this part of the video is particularly juicy for me because it reveals a big difference between blasting and consuming. So Chris Voss is a lead blaster. Not only that, he's a blast, sleep, ISFJ, and so he has this very refined inner world. He has a very refined message, and he wants to take that message and he wants to share it with the world, and he wants to offer whatever value that message contains to everyone else. Never split the difference. It's direct, it's to the point, it has all of the excesses shaved off. And then you have this, what Dave and Shan would call a chaos monkey entering the picture. And so Jordan starts getting very technical and he starts injecting chaos into Chris Voss's very refined blaster wisdom. Because essentially what Jordan is doing is he's saying, well, does that make sense to me? And by asking if it makes sense, if it's reasonable, he actually used the word reasonable, he's trying to map out the logic of it. He wants to know the parameters of this statement, never split the difference. It seems like he thinks it's a little too simplistic, it's not open-ended enough, which is why he says, perhaps there are certain circumstances where there's a time pressure where X, Y, and Z conditions apply, and therefore, in this particular instance, it might actually be beneficial to break the rule of never splitting the difference. You might actually have to split the difference. So again, he's getting very technical. He's seeking out the parameters of the statement, and he wants to understand the full scope of the logic. And basically, to perform this act of stress testing what Chris Voss is saying, Jordan is embarking on a hypothetical exercise. And this is something that people who have savior intuition do quite a bit. You'll hear, well, imagine that blank, and then that imagined scenario is supposed to have some sort of bearing on actuality. So he's saying, imagine that all of these conditions apply, your thing is no longer true. And this happens actually at multiple points in the conversation. Jordan really likes to stand on hypotheticals, on thought experiments. Well, let's imagine this. Well, let's imagine that. And then how do all of these different imaginings hang together? How do they serve to complicate what he seems to be perceiving as an overly simplistic narrative? And so conversely, we have an interesting moment from Chris when he does this.
Oh, how dare you? How dare you? No, 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 no.
So I want to acknowledge that obviously there's a degree to which Chris is joking here, but at the same time, a lot of jokes have some basis in reality, and what he's doing here is he's expressing some frustration that Jordan is trying to overly complicate things. Jordan is trying to make Chris see things from a new perspective, even though he already has this very narrowed blaster bullet point that he wants to share with the world. And he even says, how dare you? Like, what are you doing? This is my whole thing. I came here to pitch my book to you guys. I want to promote it to your audience. And even though he's doing it kind of playfully, there's also clearly a sense in which Chris is trying to use shame as a conversational leverage here. He's trying to operate in that realm of FE to achieve a different outcome in the conversation. He's talking to Jordan like some people might talk to their dog. No, no, no. There's no rationality to it.
Let me develop that out for a moment.
And instead of taking the bait, Jordan wants to proceed with exploring the parameters of this basic blaster point. Let me develop that out for a moment. What does it mean to develop out something? He's already established a framework for exploring a hypothetical scenario where maybe this blaster point doesn't actually stand up to scrutiny. And so now he wants to keep developing this. It's like forming a logical picture of what's going on. At this point, I'm getting a little redundant, but I hope you can actually see what I'm trying to talk about.
There is something about negotiation that is inextricably associated with compromise. I don't think that's the best way of conceptualizing negotiation as such, though. See, because people are going to listen to this podcast, and they're going to think, no. Sometimes you have to split the difference. And
No.
Okay.
Again, I don't have a lot to say here other than that he is trying to explore the boundaries of this concept. He wants to know, in what cases is it actually true? So it's also really funny that Chris isn't even allowing Jordan to finish his thought. He's still operating from the space of, no, stop doing that. No, that's wrong. I already have my basic thesis narrowed down, and let's not play this hypothetical game. He's not even hearing what Jordan is saying.
Okay.
I knew this was going to be.
I want to push you on that because
Push me. Don't push me. Hug me. Give me a hug.
No, I'm going to go with the push, I think. We can hug at the end if it all goes well.
Oh, God. So Chris has tried to end this intellectualizing process, this process of trying to seek the limits of his ideas, and Jordan, being someone who likes to tinker with ideas, is insistent on exploring those limits. And then we have the funny moment where Chris is like, don't push me, hug me, come here, give me a hug. And in the objective personality system, Chris is someone who has introverted thinking as a demon function, so that's part of the reason why it's so difficult for him to ride this particular train of thought. He's not fully hearing what's being said. He doesn't want to play this particular game, and he's kind of defaulting to his extroverted feeling. He doesn't want to be pushed. He wants to hug it out. He's kind of playing the emotional game. Again, he's doing it jokingly, but look at how much more at ease he is talking in these terms than Peterson is. Peterson wants to play the logic game, and he gets a little uncomfortable at this suggestion that they hug it out.
I don't think it's reasonable to throw out the idea that compromise is sometimes required in negotiation.
Now you're name calling. How dare you? What, you call me names now?
Well,
So again, Peterson is playing this impersonal, logical game where he's trying to figure out the limits of certain ideas. And he says, I don't think it's reasonable to throw out this idea. And it's a little bit hard to hear with the conflicting audio streams, but basically, Chris is like, oh, so I'm unreasonable now. So you're calling me names, you're using name calling. And I think that this moment is hilarious and so illuminating as to how these guys each construe their own realities. Like I said, Peterson's playing that logical game, and it's easy for him. It's something that he does naturally. It's something that he does in a calm savior state. And Chris, as somebody who has introverted thinking as a demon function, he's going to have a lot of unconscious negativity wrapped up in his ability to use logically linked ideas and arguments to come to a coherent thought, as well as his own sense of personal identity. So he feels attacked, and he thinks of that in terms of name calling, bullying. He thinks of it in extroverted feeling terms. These are the weapons that are on the table for an extroverted feeler. It goes back to what I said earlier with the "how dare you" comment that he made. He's thinking in terms of, like, how do we use not just shame, but you could use motivation, you could use sadness, you could use X, Y, and Z. So many emotions out there. I can't wait to learn about them someday. And as I mentioned before, he's joking to a degree, and he's a double decider, so this is not going to be as dramatic as if you were attacking the identity of an ENFJ or an ESFJ, for example.
Well, maybe I'm just digging up the reasons for the marriage collapse. No, sorry.
Anyway.
Digging up the reasons, again, that's a very NETI kind of statement. Obviously, he's joking, but his jokes kind of reflect something of his automatic assumptions, and that's how he thinks about the world. And of course, he kind of realizes that he made an emotional faux pas, a tribal faux pas, and he apologizes in a very bashful way. He gets caught up here in NT buffering mode, trying to save his ass after his faux pas, and his daughter is just like, anyway. So that's this video. Please let me know if you guys got anything out of it. I want to do videos like this more in the future. If you guys have any particular requests on topics, I would love to hear that. Yeah, thank you guys very much, and I will catch you next time.